I started by telling you of my two jobs. One is the agricultural chaplain's job, and the other one is running this environmental or sustainable development organisation. And the passion of both, in a sense, is what drives me. The link between human health and environmental health has been a driving force in my ministry. I've been a priest for 25 years. I've been an agricultural chaplain for 20 years. But what I wanted to talk about was the theology of climate change. That sounds very heavy. I hope it's not going to be too heavy. But I think there are some prophetic messages coming out of what God is saying. There are three mechanisms by which the earth cools itself down. The first is evaporation. Liquid water absorbs the energy, turns into water vapour, the gas rises, taking the heat with it, and at some point, external temperature and pressure will cause the water to precipitate out, and that energy will be lost. If you are fortunate enough to be standing underneath at the time, you will feel the rain dropping on your head. So that mechanism explains not only how the earth cools itself down, it also explains the rain. The second is convection. You know, if you want to get hot, you go and stand next to the fire. If you want to get cooler, you stand away from the fire. The energy from hot surfaces is greatest closer to the surface. Well, the earth gets heated up by the sun, and that hot surface heats the atmosphere above it. Those molecules rise. Their place is taken by colder air, which comes back down. That convection current takes heat away from the Earth's surface up into the atmosphere where it's lost. The intensity of that can vary. Sometimes you'll simply feel that as the wind. If it combines with all the water vapour, if, for example, it's over the tropical oceans where there's lots of water and where the sun is most intense, you can end up with tropical storms. So that's your second great mechanism, and you can see again how the Earth, the energy from the sun, is translated into what we experience as the weather. This is not too heavy, is it? Climate change in 5 minutes. Come on, this is pretty good going. The third mechanism is a bit different. Anything that is made of atoms will give off energy. You do it all the time. It's nothing to do with being alive or dead, by the way. The tables are giving off energy. The walls are giving off energy. It's simply that atoms have energy. That energy is what we call long-wave radiation, and the Earth emits that into the atmosphere. It's the third great mechanism by which the Earth cools itself down. But some of that energy on the way out is trapped. It's captured by molecules, and they are the greenhouse gases. The most important is carbon dioxide. So that keeps us warmer than if they didn't exist. And without them, we wouldn't be here. Without them, the temperature of the Earth would be 15 degrees less on average than it is now. That doesn't sound very much. I tell you, there wouldn't be life if we were 15 degrees colder. The difference between now and the last ice age was 5 degrees. There would only be frozen water on the surface of the Earth, and life as we know it would not be possible. So that's a very good thing under God's providential care. The difficulty, as you know, is that we are changing the balance of those greenhouse gases. And for 200 years, we've burnt fossil fuels, we've disrupted land use, and the concentration of carbon dioxide in particular is going up. It's 50% higher than it was 200 years ago. So more of the energy is being captured and kept in the system. That is global warming. There's all this fuss about the Paris Agreement that Donald Trump is threatening to take America out of. All that said was we must limit the rise to 2 degrees by the end of this century. That will have repercussions. So many species will disappear. So many people will be forced to flee inland as the sea level rises. The ocean will become more acidic, even if we limit it to 2 degrees. What global warming is teaching us, what it's making us do, is to look again at the covenant relationship that we have with God. It's incredibly prophetic. We're rediscovering through this truths that are there in the Bible, but frankly we have either forgotten or we've obliterated under a whole mass of other things. It's asking us fundamental questions about where we exist in relation to God and in relation to creation. The first thing that it's reminding us of is that the covenant relationship is not between God and us. It is between God and all of creation. We have a role to play. We are in some senses the mediator of the covenant, but the beneficiaries are not humanity. The beneficiaries are creation in totality. A covenant with Noah. God said, "This is the sign of the covenant that I am making between me and you and every living creature with you. A covenant for all generations to come. I have set my rainbow in the clouds." The covenant is between God, us, and every living creature. And the sign of that covenant was a natural phenomenon, the rainbow in the clouds. The covenant with Abraham was a covenant of great fertility. I will make you a great nation. And the promise was the land that Abraham was going to be led to. Again, humanity is part of it, but humanity is not the totality. The land and the relationship to the land are all inextricably caught up. The covenant with Moses, the Ten Commandments, same story. The promise is the promised land, flowing with milk and honey. And they're told when they enter the land that if you keep the covenant, all things will go well with you. The land will remain fertile. But if you don't, what happens? Well, we know what happened. The Babylonians came and took the people into the exile of Babylon, where they paid the price until such time as Isaiah says, comfort ye, my people. Your time of iniquity, your warfare is ended." And they were permitted to return. Hosea wrote this: "The day of the Lord is a covenant with the beasts of the field and the birds of the air and the creatures that move along the ground." There is nothing in the Old Testament that says God is only interested in us. It's not that he's not interested in us. What climate change is teaching us is that we ought to be interested in other things too. The covenant grace extends to the whole of creation. What of the New Testament? Well, you had the passage that was read to you by Janet. It's this great Christological hymn in Colossians. I'm going to read it to you again, but I'm going to put the emphasis on certain words. I'm going to lead you in a certain direction. Christ is the image of the invisible God, the firstborn over all creation. For by him all things were created, things in heaven and on earth, visible and invisible, whether thrones or powers or rulers or authorities. All things were created by him and for him. He is before all things, and in him all things hold together. He is the head of the body, the church. He is the beginning and the firstborn from among the dead, so that in everything he might have the supremacy. For God was pleased to have all his fullness dwell in him, and through him to reconcile to himself all things, whether things on earth or things in heaven, by making peace through his blood shed on the cross. It's there in the New Testament too. God's providential care is not just about us. The whole of creation is caught up. It's a fabulous triad of God, humanity, creation. And the point is, we cannot worship God unless we take creation seriously. That's what climate change is reminding us of. So if creation is an integral part of our covenant relationship with God, what happens when the covenant becomes broken? Hildegard of Bingen was a great medieval writer. She wrote this: "When Abel's blood was shed, the entire earth sighed, and at that moment was declared a widow. Just as a woman without the comfort of her husband remains fixed in her widowhood, the earth was also robbed of its totality by the murder committed by Cain." It seems very odd that human sin has an effect on environmental health. But that's exactly what you find in the Old Testament. Listen carefully to the words of Isaiah. "The earth dries up and withers. The world languishes and withers. The exalted of the earth languish. The earth is defiled by its people. They have disobeyed the laws, violated the statutes, and broken the everlasting covenant. Therefore a curse consumes the earth. Its people must bear their guilt. Therefore the earth's inhabitants are burned up, and very few are left." It's heady stuff, but what Isaiah is not saying is that the earth suffers because we mistreat it. What he's saying is that if we break the covenant with God, then that fertility, that beauty, are all impinged. It's a very odd thing to get your head around. Our relationship with God has a direct bearing on the beauty and fertility of the earth. It's like there is a moral code. Well, isn't that what you'd expect of a creator God who infuses his beauty across the whole of creation? Amos carries the same message, but as a warning. It's God speaking to the people about what he's doing. "I withheld rain from you when the harvest was still 3 months away. I sent rain on one town, but withheld it from another. One field had rain, another had none, and dried up. People staggered from town to town for water, but did not get enough to drink. Yet you have not returned to me, declares the Lord." One understanding of climate change is that it is a warning from God. It is a judgment of what might be if we do not honour the covenant relationship. And is it just the Old Testament? No, of course it's not. St. Paul wrote in Romans, "Creation waits in eager expectation for the sons of God to be revealed, in hope that the creation itself will be liberated from its bondage to decay and brought into the glorious freedom of the children of God." The science is teaching us that we cannot go on living in the way that we've been living. We cannot go on pretending that we have 3 planets worth of resources when we only have 1. The theology is teaching us that climate change is not a matter of technology. It's a matter of honouring our covenant relationship with God. Of getting back to the understanding that God's providence is not just for humanity, it is for all of his creation. We have a role to play. It's not that humans don't matter, it is that other things matter as well. And the challenge for the churches is to take that seriously. You look on any website of almost any Christian denomination and try and find out what people think about the environment and climate change. You will be hard put to find anything. I'm a member of the Church of England. I can tell you what drives us. It's people, which is good, and it's buildings. Hereford Diocese website has nothing to say about this great issue of our age, this spectre that by the end of this century we may have consigned our children and our grandchildren to an uninhabitable planet. And yet the scriptures do. That's why it's a prophetic message. Donald Trump is wanting to take America out of the Paris Agreement, so that great nation will not be signing up to its commitment to try and keep the level of the temperature rise to less than 2 degrees. If you want to find out what most Americans think about that, Google Arnold Schwarzenegger. Look at what he says on YouTube. He was the governor of California, and California is one of the leading states in the United States for renewable energy and for taking the issues of climate change seriously. Trump may take America out, but American business won't follow. The big multinational corporations have signed up to something called RE100, Renewable Energy 100, 100% from renewable energy, all of their electricity supplies. Microsoft have got there, Walmart are getting there, and the chief executive of Walmart is saying it's not just my company, it's everyone who supplies us. Already, energy from renewable energy is cheaper than from coal and gas. In a way, Trump can do what he likes, but there are other voices. And I have to say, I see the Holy Spirit in all of that. What's disappointing is that the church's voice is so muted. Our theology is so profound. The God who transcends humanity and creation. We do have things to say, but we really ought to be shouting about it.